What is up, guys? Today I'm a little bit sick, but that's not keeping me from a challenge, right? So I came up with a challenge for I'm going to try to read 6 books in 60 minutes. So I'm going to read a book, one book in 10 minutes. I'm going to spend 10 minutes on each book. Not going to read the whole book, but I'm going to pull one idea from each one and then try to do a recap on all the ideas that I got. I'm going to try to use that serendipity that I was talking about from Where Good Ideas Come From. Talks about the feeding your brain with a bunch of different topics so that maybe you can make one awesome connection or multiple awesome connections just by having that mass of knowledge. 6 books I'm going to be reading. I have them set them out right here. We got Outliers, Making Sense of Suffering, Freakonomics, Social, When I Stop Talking You'll Know I'm Dead by Jerry Weintraub, and Elon Musk's biography. So I'm gonna set the timer and see how this goes. I'll see you guys when I get done. What is up, guys? I'm back. Wow. I'm a changed man. I can already feel it. Wow, those books were awesome. Like I said, my style of reading is not conventional, right? It's not front to back. It's more or less picking and choosing what I want. So like for this exact challenge, I just wanted one good idea from each book. So 10 minutes to get it, and I wrote it down. You can see my notes here. Yeah, I got front and back. So quite a few notes, but I'm excited to go through them with you guys. So the very first book I went through was called Outliers. And the topic that stuck out to me, the one that I lingered on, I found myself lingering on, was the rule of 10,000 hours. And the rule of 10,000 hours, that it says that it takes 10,000 hours to be an expert at something. We talked about the Beatles, and so the Beatles became a band in 1957, and they didn't make it to America until 1964 or 1963-ish. So they'd been a band for 7 years before they even made it to America and before they got famous, right? They were a high school band to begin with, and at a high school, this guy came to Liverpool, and he was looking for people to play at a night show. It was a strip club, and the Beatles kind of got dragged into it. And so at first they were playing 1 or 2 hours a night, and they had played shows before, but nothing like this, because they were asked to play all night. See, they were playing sometimes 8 hours a night, and they've averaged about 5 hours a night and 7 days a week at this nightclub. But so the Beatles performed over 270 times in just over a year and a half, which is insane. You know, most people don't get that, for 5 or 6 years. So like, they just exponentially got better and better. The first time they played, they sucked really bad, but the more times, the more consistency, you get a lot better at what you do. So the idea is 10,000 hours to be awesome, to be an expert at something. You can also think of Arnold Schwarzenegger in the gym, perfecting his body. It took well over 10,000 hours. So the Beatles had it. They became legendary, and it wasn't just because of luck. I had previously thought it was just because of luck and who they knew, but apparently these guys put in a lot of work. It takes a lot of skill to be able to play for 2 hours, let alone 8. I couldn't imagine, seriously, being able to hold the crowd for that long. If you want to be really good at what you do, you have to do it for 10,000 hours. You have to love it. So that's what I got from that book. It also wanted to talk about the problem with that rule, because if you have a part-time job, it's already taking you away from your dream, right? You have to be all in. That's kind of what my takeaway was, is that part-time jobs are just distractions, and if it's not what you want to do, you need to figure it out soon. Don't waste your time. 10,000 hours is a lot. But if you want to be legendary, if you want to be remembered, if you want to be someone that makes a difference, that's what it takes. So that's what I got from that book. The next book is called Making Sense Out of Suffering. And this book really blew my mind. I had not started reading it yet until today. Some of these other books I dabbled in a little bit. But, like I said, I'm just trying to get that one idea. So in the book, Buddha comes up with 4 noble truths that hold true and to make sense in the theme of the book, which is making sense out of suffering. So the first truth is that life is suffering. We are born into suffering. Live in suffering, and we die in suffering. To have what you wish you hadn't and to not have what you wish you had is suffering. The second of the noble truths is that the cause of suffering is desire. Desire creates a gap between itself and satisfaction. The gap that it creates is suffering. This is really powerful. Suffering is the gap between desire and satisfaction. So not getting what you want when you want it is suffering. The third noble truth is the way to end suffering is to end desire. The world tries to close the gap between desire and satisfaction by increasing satisfaction and never succeeds. So I'm trying to interpret this. We try to close the gap between desire and satisfaction by increasing the satisfaction. The fourth of the noble truths is the only way to end desire is to follow the noble eightfold path of ego reduction. So to lose your ego, to lose oneself, to lose one's own identity, and to just become one with everything. See, your ego is your source of identity, right? It's what makes you different from everybody else. So by losing that, this is also ties in with the art of meditation, a lot of the Buddha's teachings is just being one with the present moment, The present moment is the only moment that you actually have control over, right? Just absorbing everything in that present moment, all the feels, all the textures, the wind on your face, and enjoying that moment, right? We can't live in the future. We can plan for the future, but we can't live in it, right? We don't know exactly what's going to happen. Like, I could die in a car accident tomorrow. Hopefully I don't. But you see what I'm saying? This is the only moment we can live in. So fully embrace it. Love every second you get. I feel like we tend to not do that sometimes. So how do you end desire? Become one with everything. Live in the present moment and don't want. Just be happy to have. So, yeah. So that's what I got out of Making Sense Out of Suffering. The next book I read was Freakonomics. And this book was really interesting because I just read a certain section from it, and it was about this Harvard business student. He was doing some graduate work at the University of Chicago, and he was asked to go into these poor neighborhoods, these rundown neighborhoods, and ask them a question. They were specifically targeting African Americans, and there was a survey. It was like a 70-question survey, and the questions were, how do you feel about being black and poor? This was the first question that came up. And the answers would be very bad, bad, neither bad nor good, somewhat good, very good. He was a graduate student, and I'm not sure what nationality he was, but he wasn't black and he wasn't white. And so he's going around trying to find someone to take this survey, and he winds up in some abandoned project. It's like this old abandoned hotel. And he's going through this stairwell, and he runs across these 6 guys, and they're shooting dice, right? They're gambling. And he soon realizes that these guys are part of a gang, and they're all gang members. And he gets in confrontation with them, and they're threatening to kill him. And then their leader comes and shows up, and they're asking him all these questions, and he tries to get them to take their survey, and they ask him the first question on the survey. He asks them, and they get pissed off at him. They almost kill the guy. Somehow they give him, everything cools off, and they kind of make him stay there because they think he might be a spy for other gangs. They make him stay and hang out with him for a whole night, and then in the morning he gets to leave. And I don't know what got into him, but he went back again a couple weeks later to see if they were still there, and it turns out they hadn't. But he got in contact with their boss, and he found out where they were, and he hung out with them for an entire year. He would hang out with they were crack dealers, but they were also in a gang. And it was really interesting because at the end they asked this guy what he had learned from being around this crowd for so long, and he was like, you'd be surprised, but it's quite similar to actual business. It's quite similar to the way the hierarchy of gangs and drug dealing. The similarity between that in businesses like McDonald's or like Walmart. It's insane, right? He talks about, the top guys are making the most, and they're delegating tasks to like the managers or the bosses of people, and then they would have people that were working for them, more or less managers, I guess. So you'd have the high guy, the dude on top, then you have the boss who's overseeing all these managers, or multiple managers, maybe branched out by division, and then for each boss there's multiple managers, and then each of those managers has people below them. They would call them the foot soldiers, or the guys who were selling the drugs on the streets. And then below them were just guys who were affiliated with the gang, used the gang for protection or for a sense of identity. But that's the big takeaway I got from Freakonomics, is how similar the drug and the black market is to actual business. They're quite similar, and it's kind of shocking and eye-opening to think about that. Moving on, the next book I read was called Social. And what I got from that was the ideas of self-awareness. I have a quote here. Socrates, the unexamined life. Okay, I have a quote here. Socrates said that the unexamined life is life not worth living. This book went on to talk about how we are literally wired into our own operating system to see the world in terms of minds and bodies. And the two systems are separated in the brain. One system for thinking about our own mind, and another system for thinking about our own body. We have no way to bridge this chasm. I found this quite interesting. The mind recognizes the mind, and the mind also recognizes the body, but they're not one. And the brain doesn't recognize them as one. These brings in a lot of questions into religion and afterlife and things like that, but I find it really interesting that there is no way to bridge this gap. We know that our bodies are temporary. It's already programmed into our brains, right? We don't recognize the body, and the mind is one. They're separated. This was probably the biggest idea I got from reading this, and I reflected on this a lot while I was, I didn't read the whole 10 minutes on this one. I kind of got this idea and decided to reflect a little bit on my own life and my own things. I'm not, religion and afterlife, that's beyond the scope of what I'm doing here. I'm just trying to bring these ideas forward, and your interpretation is yours. So yeah, moving on. We have When I Stop Talking, You'll Know I'm Dead. This book really triggered something in my head and an idea that I have. And this guy is very interesting, actually. His name is Jerry Weintraub. Just a natural born entrepreneur, Jerry Weintraub also said that people will pay you to make their lives easier. Always take the time to make the pitch. Personal service is the name of the game. Look at these opportunities. Look for opportunities to make people's lives easier. Something that's appealing to everybody. Something that anybody could use. It's got to be, that's what's going to make a great idea. That's what I took away from this. So an interesting fact about Jerry Weintraub was that when he was 14 years old, him and his friend decided to go hitchhiking. They wanted to go to Myrtle Beach. His friend had family or something in Myrtle Beach, and they really wanted to make it. So, they didn't have a car, they didn't have any means of transportation, so they decided to go hitchhiking. They hitchhiked for 4 days. And they actually ended up making it to Myrtle Beach. They had to hop on a plane. They got really scared down there, and they went to a cop. They're 14-year-old little kids saying that they were from the Bronx. This cop made them hop on a plane and go back home. And they get off the plane, and Jerry remembers, walking, seeing his dad, and he said his fist was all curled up, about, wanting to hit him. And his mom was just really happy to see him. And he gets back, and his dad asks him. He says, why did you do it? And Jerry was just, I want to see the world. It doesn't surprise me the way this guy's life turned out, man. It takes a certain drive. It takes a certain type of person to be a dreamer, to be someone who doesn't do things conventionally. I think there's a lot of power in being different, and yeah. Going on to my next book, it's one second. I have some green tea here. So going on my next book, we have Elon Musk. Tesla, SpaceX, and the quest for a fantastic future. I don't want to go too much in depth because I talk about Elon all the time. What's really interesting about this guy is that, from the get-go, he was always interested. He's been interested in electric cars since he was in his college years. They interviewed his girlfriend for the book, and she remembers the first thing he said to her. Like they sat down on the couch, at his apartment or something. It was at a party, and he said to her, he's like, "So I think about electric cars a lot." So this guy, it wasn't just all of a sudden he decided to think of Tesla. He'd been thinking about it for 10, 15 years about this idea. And Tesla now is maybe one of the biggest movements in electric cars and finding new ways to power them. Elon may have the biggest impact on humankind in the past 50, maybe 100 years. This guy just has so much planned. He gave a speech at a graduation for a college, I'm not sure which one, but he said, if everyone else is working 50 hours a week and you work 100 hours a week, in a year or in a quarter, you get twice as much done as everybody else. And he's not just saying these things, he actually lives it. He works about 80 hours a week between the 3 companies that he has, sleeps roughly 3 to 4 hours a night. And what gets him up in the morning is his dream, is his vision. He wants to change the world. He wants to get humankind off Earth because he thinks that we will all suffer and die here in the near future, and he's looking out for future generations, And that's his drive. That's his passion. That wakes him up. That's what wakes him up every morning. That's what gets him to work 80 hours a week, because he doesn't think of it as work. It's his passion. It's his love. I really challenge you to find something you love to do. Do things that you're passionate about. Do things that when you do them, I was reading this book called Flow. Flow is when time seems to fade away when you do something. So like when I do art, like this piece here, when I'm working on art, time just melts. It doesn't exist. All I'm focused on is the present moment. Working on art, all I'm focused on is working on this. Nothing else. I'm not worried about bills. I'm not worried about school. I'm only worried about that. That's what I want out of my career. That's what I want to do for the rest of my life. Because living in the present moment is the only moment, right? Don't be worried about the future. To an extent, be worried, but don't, not too much. So that sums up all of my books, all 6. And I hope you guys really enjoyed this. I hope you guys got some good nuggets of information. I'll try to do some other challenges like this in the near future. To leave you guys, I have a quick question. I was thinking about this when I was making my tea. Jeff Bezos, when he started Amazon, he would interview his employees when he was first starting, and to see if they had a level of critical thinking. And what he would ask them in interviews were these really obscure questions. He would ask, he asked this one guy, he says, so why, when he's interviewing him, why do you think that they make manhole covers round? Obviously Jeff knew the answer, but the guy was like, oh, so they can roll them around so it's easier to get them from place to place. And Jeff goes, wrong. But he still hired him because of the level that it took to, it takes a certain level to think about those things, not everyone thinks about that. Now everyone has that curiosity. So my question for you guys that I thought of while I was making my tea is, why do talk shows always have coffee mugs? 90% of the time it's just water in them. So why do they always have coffee mugs on the talk show or any type of show, a podcast, whatever? Why coffee mugs? Why not just glasses of water? That's my question for you. All right, I'll see you guys later.